let's talk about Warner Brothers Pictures co-CEOs Pam Adby and Mike DeLuca, who have been in their position for 3 years. Their appointment is the greatest decision that's been made since Warner Brothers Discovery has been a thing, since David Zaslav took over Warner Brothers. But the credit isn't Zaslav's. Now, if you remember, Zaslav went to former WB CEO president and Disney CEO and president Alan Horn as a consultant to advise him, because Zaslav conceded he had no scripted entertainment experience. And Alan Horn advised him to appoint Mike DeLuca and Pam Adby as co-CEOs of Warner Brothers Pictures. This is a goated decision because Mike and Pam are two of the best producers in the business. Their CV speaks for itself. Now, this year, or should I say last year, Warner Brothers Pictures made some very successful films. Very successful indeed. Huge box office. And yesterday, the Academy announced their nominations for this year's Oscars. And I think there was about, 29, 30 nominations. A huge success. Proof that Mike DeLuca and Pam Adby are doing a fantastic job. Now, earlier last year, Access Media were reporting that David Zaslav was not happy with their performances because the first year or so saw many flops. But here's the thing, all those flops had nothing to do with Mike and Pam. They were the previous incumbents' work and green lighting. Nothing to do with Pam and Mike, even though those movies were released while Pam and Mike were there. Pam and Mike had nothing to do with those movies. So why was this being leaked via the press? I've told you my theory before. I believe that Peter Safran and James Gunn were behind this. You see, there's a little bit of bad feeling between Mike DeLuca, Pam Adby, James Gunn and Peter Safran. Because originally, when Zaslav put Mike and Pam in place at Warner Brothers Pictures, they were in control of DC. And for some reason, suddenly, they were removed from that position and Gunn and Safran were appointed co-CEOs of DC Studios. Now, I can assure you that consultant, former WB CEO president and Disney CEO and president Alan Horn had nothing to do with this. He would never advise anyone to put Gunn and Safran in place of emptying the garbage, let alone the co-CEOs of DC Studios. So the question has to be asked, why were Pam and Mike in their newly appointed position as co-CEOs of Warner Brothers Pictures removed as the people in charge of DC Films and DC Television? I believe it was Alan Horn's idea for them to run everything, including DC Films. They were making some interesting decisions. You see, Mike DeLuca and Pam Adby are what I call Zack Snyder loyalists. They were trying to restore the Snyderverse. It was their idea to bring back Henry Cavill as Superman. Now, to draw you a better picture, we need to go back to the development and production of the Flash movie. Because Pam and Mike made the decision that in that movie, Henry Cavill's Superman and Gal Gadot's Wonder Woman and all the rest of Snyder's Justice League would actually be in the Flash movie in a little cameo near the end of the movie. But once Gunn and Safran were put in place, Andy Muschietti's movie was rewritten and redirected reshot by James Gunn. The movie we saw was a rewrite and a reshoot from James Gunn. Now, nobody knows this, nobody is saying this, but I know this via my connections and sources because my late father used to work for a studio in Hollywood. So I know a lot of people, and a lot of people tell me stuff. Stuff that I don't always tell you because I'm a discreet person. And I'm not here to reveal things for clicks and likes and views. I don't need to go fucking viral. I'm here because I enjoy doing these videos. I'm a movie fan and a TV fan and a fan of great art. My DNA is part of this very industry. So my motivation is to inform you accurately and honestly, but to give you my opinions on what's going on in the industry, specifically with DC films and sometimes DC television. So Mike and Pam had one plan to fix the Flash movie because that movie was happening when Hamada was in charge of DC. Pam and Mike came in and said, right, we need to redevelop this movie and embrace the Snyderverse. That's what they wanted to do. But then Zaslav removed them and said, your focus is purely on WB Pictures, not on DC. Gunn and Safran have got this. So Gunn and Safran decided to do other things. And Gunn rewrote and reshot the Flash movie and brought in his cinematographer, right? That's why it's such a shit movie. Now, Mike and Pam had better plans, but that was all reversed when Gunn and Safran were put in place. So, this is where Access Media got this information that Zaslav early last year was thinking of firing, removing and sacking Mike and Pam from their position of co-CEOs of Warner Brothers Pictures. Now, I can't inform you accurately if any of this is true. My theory is that Gunn and Safran leaked this to the press, but it wasn't necessarily true. But what they wanted to do was try and unhinge the position of Mike and Pam as co-CEOs of Warner Brothers Pictures. It happens all the time. And why I think that Peter Safran was behind this, because one of those rumours was that Mike and Pam were going to be fired and Peter Safran was going to replace them as CEO of Warner Brothers Pictures. So, it makes sense in a self-serving act he leaked that Zaslav wasn't happy with Mike and Pam's performance and he was going to remove them as co-CEOs of Warner Brothers Pictures. But you'd have to be a fucking idiot to fire Mike and Pam, because look what's going on now. Last year, their films were great, successful, and they've been nominated for around 30 fucking Oscars. That tells you what great producers Mike DeLuca and Pam Adby are. They're doing a fine job. So just think for a moment. If Zaslav allowed them not only to run WB Pictures, but to run DC Studios, the positive consequences would have been there for all to see. But DC fans can't have good things. This is the truth behind Adby and DeLuca. Doing a fine job. They would have done a great job running DC, but someone persuaded Zaslav to remove Pam and Mike from DC and bring in Gunn and Safran, which has been, of course, a fucking disaster. It's also my theory that Pam and Mike will regain control of DC Studios. I think that James Gunn and Peter Safran aren't long for the co-CEO position at DC Studios, That is my opinion. No one's told me that. It's a little theory that I have. And DC Studios would be stronger for it. I would imagine that Sarandos will keep Mike and Pam in their position when and if Netflix take over Warner Brothers Discovery officially. Now, he and his people will soon be going to the antitrust with the American government to be addressing them and telling them why there's no problem with them, Netflix, buying Warner Brothers Discovery. So things are taking shape. So the restoration of the Snyderverse is looking good, like it's going to happen. And if it does happen, the people who deserve credit are Mike DeLuca and Pam Adby, still today working towards restoring and restructuring the Snyderverse. You know, it's not an accident that Zack Snyder keeps on posting on Instagram. Are you joking me? He's putting posts up holding comic books with Frank Sinatra's The Impossible Dream, or whatever that song fucking was. He's telling us it's happening. Or at the very least, he wants it to happen. The impossible dream of restoring the Snyderverse is going to happen. And it's very, very exciting. And it's very, very interesting. I think that James Gunn and Peter Safran must be removed as co-CEOs of DC Studios. I suppose you're wondering why it's come out now that Christina Hodson apparently, allegedly, is writing or has been writing a script for Brave and the Bold. I believe Gunn has leaked this because he's realised there's no hype around the DCU. He also realises all publicity is good publicity as long as people are fucking talking about you. It worked for the Snyderverse, by the way. The haters and the lovers talking about it all the time. Even today, it works. People like to talk about stuff online. But it doesn't matter because the Christina Hodson thing doesn't help the Gunverse, the DCU, in a positive light. More and more people are realising what I said months ago, that Brave and the Bold wasn't even happening, to be the truth. The only reason that Gunn has leaked this out to start conversations online about his DCU. I'm still pretty confident that Brave and the Bold won't happen. Because who's going to watch a Batman movie written by Christina Hodson? And God knows who eventually would direct this movie. Because one thing's for sure, it ain't going to be Andy Muschietti. It was never going to be Andy Muschietti, no matter what Gunn says or nobody else says. So I don't see that movie happening. I think ultimately the DCU will be disbanded. And I think Adby and DeLuca need to do a thing where, yeah, the Snyderverse is restored, but also other talented creatives can come in and do individual, standalone DC movies and TV limited shows about DC instead of a franchise. Franchises don't work. People don't want to watch franchises anymore. I've said it before. If Peter Jackson says, hey, WB, I've got a great idea for a DC character, a DC movie, let me do it. Well, you're fucking Peter Jackson. Of course you can. Del Toro says, hey, I want to make a DC movie. Yeah, mate. Of course. We're not fucking stupid. And Keanu says, please, I've been trying to do a Constantine 2 for years. Let me do it. You're fucking Keanu Reeves. You can do whatever you want. Here's the key to WB, right? Sensible decisions, everyone. But with Gunn, you're not going to get any sensible decisions because he's such an egotistical maniac. All he cares about is James Gunn and what James Gunn wants to make. This is why he cancelled Superman and Lois. And by the way, he was wrong to cancel Superman and Lois. So things are changing. the Gunverse, the DCU, is already dead. And it'll be very interesting if Man of Tomorrow gets made, and if we even see that movie.